it was sometime in the mid-90s that I was spending my Sunday afternoon at a middle school volleyball tournament. Best times of my life, right? It's great times. I remember it was one of those all-day things where they had, concessions and all that, and so we were all hopped up on Skittles or something like that. And me and my buddies, in between the games, we'd go sit out in the parking lot. And in between one of the particular games, we were sitting there in the parking lot, and this huge boat of a car that looked like a time machine from 1955 pulled into the parking lot with just what I can only describe as an elderly couple dressed in their Sunday best. She had the big flowery hat on, he had the fedora, suit, tie, all of that sort of stuff. They pulled up next to my group of friends, and the lady leaned her head out the passenger side of the window and said, young man, I told you it was a long time ago, but young man, what is happening at the gymnasium today? Now, young man threw me off, but gymnasium really threw me off because I was like, is that where they get the word gym from? It all makes sense now. And I said, well, ma'am, it's a volleyball tournament because I have manners, and I called her ma'am. And you would have thought I told her we were doing child sacrifices in the gymnasium, because her husband put his head in his hands and started shaking back and forth. And she leaned, back into the car and gasped and said this. I'll never forget this phrase. She said, "On the Sabbath?" And that's the only time I'd heard that word outside of the church. But I think that was their goal today, was to go to all the parking lots that were full and let people know that on this Lord's Day, there should be no volleyball. I wanted to quote some Old Testament and said, well, you probably shouldn't drive that car farther than a certain amount of, whatever. It was like, oh. So I wasn't that sarcastic yet in my life. But I can't recall, even growing up in church, ever hearing a sermon about Sabbath. Sabbath for me growing up was just synonymous with Sunday morning, right? It was the day that we went to church. Now, my family, particularly, we would not go out to eat after church, which was like, I would see my friends and I'd be like, should I judge them because they do, or try to go with them so that we come back Sunday night, right? So I'm gonna go hang out with my friend Brett for the day because we're good buddies and it's wholesome and whatever. But I knew they were just going to Pizza Express after church, and that's what I wanted to do. So it was usually a big fat no. I didn't get to do that. But what we would do is we wouldn't shop. We wouldn't go to the restaurant, no grocery stores, all that. We would go to church. After church, we would go home, eat lunch, and we would weed eat 10 acres of fence line unto the Lord. But in 2019, after me and my wife have been married for 10 years, we began, I guess what you could call a Sabbath journey, trying to figure out what the Sabbath could look like in a modern world, and how we could not become Pharisees with the whole deal. So I'll get into some details later of kind of what that looks like for us, but I want to just give you my working definition of Sabbath so we're not confused with what we're talking about. This is my definition of Sabbath. I think it fits our life pretty well. It's a full day to stop pretending that I'm the one holding all things together. It's a full day to stop pretending that I'm the one holding all things together. That job is taken. You see, Sabbath for me is not a catchphrase word for your day off. It's not the Jewish equivalent of a siesta. It's not a day to dread or to feel shame about or to think about all the things that you can't do. No, it's a day to realize all of the things that if the distractions and the detours and the deadlines of your life were gone, what could you do? What would you do? Now, I know that sounds like a pipe dream, but dream with me for just a bit. Imagine today that after you worship with us here, you went home and you just delighted in the Lord all day. You shared a meal with your family, you read a book, you had conversations that weren't via text or email, you actually really legitimately rested. And some of you can feel that a little bit, but it seems like too good to be true. Like that would be like a little slice of heaven. And to me, that's the whole point. Sabbath is a 24-hour period of your week where you stop trying to get to heaven and you let heaven come and find you. Sounds too good to be true, right? Like we're trying to, we've been trying this for 5 years now, and there's a reason we call it practicing the way of Jesus, because we are just practicing. And we're not perfecting, and bringing a slice of heaven to earth is not easy. But I'm convinced out of the little slices of Sabbath joy that we have tasted over the last 5 years, that this is a practice that I want to fight for. This is a practice that I want to try and perfect, not in a legalistic, pharisaical way, but in a way that brings joy and delight to my life. See, Sabbath can unlock a deeper connection with God in a less hurried life, or the world that just tries to speed you up. But it's also a cure for the I am the center of the universe mentality. This is our individualistic culture that says everything revolves around you. Sabbath is saying, actually, God's got this under control. So I want to step back just a little bit and look at what Sabbath is and what it's always been from the beginning. And so we'll start most notably, and what is most widely known is that Sabbath is a commandment. Sabbath is a commandment. Even if you didn't grow up in church, you've probably heard of the Big Ten, right? The Big Ten Commandments. They've made a few appearances on TV, the big screen, Charlton Heston. They pop up in court cases from time to time. People get really excited about the Big Ten. Still, one of my most cherished childhood memories was a Sunday night at my church where we would do this thing on the fifth Sunday, when we had a fifth Sunday, called a Sing-spiration. And it is just as exciting as it sounds. All music, okay? No sermon. And you're like, okay, you got my attention, right? But it was all special music. And when I say special, never mind. It was, anybody could bring whatever tape and put it in the tape player. And for this row up here, tape players are like, you get it, you'll get it. But you sing a special. You turn out the wired mic, the big poofy red thing on it, and you could sing whatever. One of my most cherished childhood memories, like to a roaring applause of 40 people in this church, I sang the song, The Perfect 10. You think I'm going to sing it for you now, but I'm not Wayne, so I am not going to sing it. But I sang it, and I nailed it. So everyone, half of the people in the church were related to me, so they had to clap for me. But here we are. I sang my heart out, 1 through 10. Now, I thought back on that this week when I was preparing for this sermon, and I realized at that time in my life, I'm probably 9 years old, and I didn't know what a graven image was. There's no way I knew that. I didn't know what it meant to bear false witness, right? I didn't know what that meant. Adultery was not something in my vocabulary, and most importantly, I didn't have any neighbors with donkeys for me to covet. So I was like, this song means like nothing to me, right? But the performance, I wish we had it taped. Like the performance was on par, like it was amazing. But isn't that kind of how we treat the commandments, like performance-wise? Like if I can get a 9 out of 10, that's a 90%, right? That's pretty good. They're so easy to say, but most of them are easy to keep. Like you don't accidentally murder people, right? Like some of them are like, yeah, I got a few of them in the bag just because I'm a normal person, right? So, but to be all like rich young ruler with it and go like, I got 10 out of 10 my whole life. Like, where's my badge, That would be a lie, which is also that's one of the commandments. So I remember being told early in ministry by one of my mentors that there are 9 commandments that if you break them, you can be fired for them, like grounds for fireable offenses, right? And there's one commandment that if you break consistently enough, you just might get promoted. And he wasn't talking about murder, right? He was talking about the 4th commandment, to remember the Sabbath. If broken, you'll probably get praised and you'll probably get promoted. Look at Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 10. This is where the original commandment comes from. At the base of Mount Sinai, God tells his people, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and to do all of your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath unto the Lord. You must not do any work. You or your son or your daughter or your male or your female servant, your livestock or the resident alien who is within your city gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and everything in it in 6 days. Then he rested on the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and declared it holy. So 1 full day, 24 hours. Jewish people would celebrate from sundown to sunup. So as soon as it got dark on Friday night, the Sabbath started. A holy day. 6 days of work, 1 day to God. But somewhere along the way, we took the commandment and we made it kind of a suggestion. Like, that can be our church day, right? The 24 hours became go to church or then watch the game or worry about what needs to happen on Monday. Because you start to get, now we have a new phrase called the Sunday scaries, right? That kind of starts to creep in the afternoon when you're trying to rest and relax. You start to think about all the stuff that's coming up the next day. Now, I do want to be clear. I want to skip over this because there are New Testament passages, Colossians chapter 2, Romans chapter 14, where Paul specifically says, you're not allowed to judge someone on which day they presume is holy and which day they celebrate as this. And I think it's important to mention that because that's the one thing we want to do is, all right, if we got a commandment, we're going to keep the commandment. Which day is it? Which day should we do it? But for us on this side of the cross, there is a ceremonial aspect to the Jewish Sabbath. But on the counter argument to that would be there are also no New Testament passages forbidding the Sabbath. Paul doesn't say stop the Sabbath and stop judging people for keeping the Sabbath. And so Jesus doesn't condemn it. Paul doesn't condemn it. And I would say it'd be a stretch to say that God is only still serious about 9 out of the 10 commandments he gave his people in the Bible. Notice the change in words. If you go back to the 10 commandments originally, there's a change in God's tone as he goes through to the 4th commandment. Number 1, thou shalt have no other gods before me. I'm not going to sing it. I know you want me to. Number 2, thou shalt not worship idols. Number 3, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. And number 4, remember. Remember the Sabbath. Remember, you see the change in tone. It's still a command, but it is a calling back to something. I love what Corey just said, how it calls us back to Eden. It calls us back to the moment that we're in right now, and it's pushing us towards eternity. Moses and the Israelites are given these commandments. They're at the base of Mount Sinai. God has set the top of that mountain on fire. And remember where they're coming from. They're coming out of slavery in Egypt. And when God says remember, he's like, I want you to remember because while you were slaves, while you were under the boot of Pharaoh, you didn't get breaks. You didn't get a day off. You didn't get, a water break over by the water cooler. You didn't get that. You didn't get to make that choice. So remember the rhythms. Remember the command. They walked out of Egypt into their every move was commanded for them. And they walked into a world of freedom. And God gives them a command and he says, don't waste your freedom. Take time to remember that you are free. And so set up this commandment, this rhythm every single time, every single week, you're going to remember that you're a free people. You see, the world doesn't revolve around you and you don't have to revolve around the world. God told them to remember. It's the feeling of a retired worker who doesn't know what to do with their time. I need something to do with my hands. I need to fill up the schedule. It's the parents who can sit still in silence when their kids are at grandma's house. Can I get an amen? It doesn't last long, but it's there. You felt that slice of heaven. When we get antsy and we rush to do something, we feel free time and we want to fill it up. We have to schedule something if we don't have something on the calendar. The chains are loosed and we search for something else to be shackled to. And the command of God is to set aside time because we need it. Because it's this forced stoppage in our lives, but we make it a suggestion. And sometimes we redefine it altogether. Dan Allender, in his book on the Sabbath, he says that there's 3 reasons that we don't practice real Sabbath. Maybe you've got more than 3, but here's the kind of these big umbrella reasons that we don't practice Sabbath. Number 1 is pride. Our pride just won't let us stop. We think we're too important. Here's what he says in the book. Boasting about work is a national pastime. The one who works harder against greater odds with fewer resources to gain the greatest ground wins. Sabbath yanks us off of that horse. Sabbath removes you from the rat race, or as the kids say, go touch some grass, right? Like get out of the office, stop staring at it. Like it removes us, but we can't let go of those things. Sometimes our pride just won't let us do it. We think we're too important. We think we're irreplaceable. And if we stop, the world stops. Sabbath and pride do not mix. Number 2 is distractions. This is the one that gets me. If you know me, no surprises here. But as soon as you set aside a day to do something specific, you're going to have 1,000 distractions try to fill up that time. The distractions could be self-induced, like the work you didn't get done or the coworkers you haven't set healthy boundaries with, but it also could just be the Murphy's Law type of stuff. Like as soon as you've got some space, something's going to fall. Something's going to catch fire, maybe literally, maybe figuratively. Something is going to happen that's going to demand your time. And so even on a day off, there's endless things that tug at us. There's always more laundry. There's always more yard work. There's always something to do. The distractions and Sabbath don't mix. Number 3, he says, is fear. Is fear. Many of us don't know what to do with delight. We're afraid to be delighted in something. Like if we feel pleasure, we feel miserable. We're like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel good. Like life is supposed to be miserable, right? Life is supposed to be hard and taxing. That's our world telling us that if things are going well, if you're feeling margin, if you're feeling delight or space, that you're failing. Okay? Like, what is that? Like, if you're not working hard, then your competitors at work or whatever, they're going to lap you, or all those, that mentality that keeps us. You see, fear and Sabbath don't mix. But it's not just about the commandment. It's not just about the commandment. There's more to it. Sabbath is not just commanded, but it's also an alignment. Sabbath is an alignment with God's created rhythms. You have felt this whether you know it or not. God didn't originate Sabbath at the base of the mountain with the Israelites. He didn't go, man, you guys are going to need some help taking a break. Because there he tells them to remember. So it had already been there. It's a rhythm that the Lord hardwired in from the beginning. This is extended to the land and the livestock and to debts. There's these natural rhythms where things turn over, and you give the land and your livestock and your neighbor, you give them a break. You give them a Sabbath. And we often feel the negative effects of this, even though we don't want to call it that. Theologian H.H. Farmer famously said, if you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. Some of you have felt these splinters. Guys, we're notorious at this, man. I remember telling my wife one time, and it was one of those paragraphs that come out of your mouth, like you're in the middle of it, and you're like, this is dumb. Like, she's going to call me out on this. But I say something to the effects of like, I really don't get sick that often. And that wasn't all. I needed to clarify. I really don't get sick all that. I just get real tired, and then I get real weak, and then I get real achy, and then my body shuts down, and I sleep for a couple days, and I'm right back at it. But I don't really get sick, right? That's splinters. That's what a splinter feels like. Like, you all know the difference between like when you take a nap and when a nap takes you? That's what I'm talking about. That's the splinters, right? Like when you take a nap, what? It's like you got the bed or the couch or wherever, out on the hammock, whatever it is. When a nap takes you, it's like a stoplight or in the middle of class or something, right? It's like, I'm just going to close my eyes for a second, right? Rest my eyelids, as my dad would say, right? I'm just going to be here for a second. You're like, how long have I been at this stoplight? But that's what a splinter is. Those are splinters. If you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. Like you look back, let's just give ourselves a refresher. The consequences of living a life against the grain of God, these created rhythms, we feel it. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 and 3, where we see the first Sabbath. So the heavens and the earth and everything in them were completed. On the seventh day, God had completed his work that he had done. He rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done, and God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy. For on it he rested from all of his work of creation. Don't miss this. I feel like I missed this for 30 years of my life, that Adam and Eve's first day on this planet that God created was rest. So they're created on the sixth day, right? We go back to Bible school. They're created on the sixth day. There was morning and there was evening on the sixth day. They get up on the seventh day and God is resting. That's their first experience. I think a lot of times we tend to think like we need to work until we collapse into Sabbath. Like I'll go until Sabbath takes me, sort of a thing. Like I'll go until the splinters get too bad and then I'll rest. But the rhythm that was instated, that was God's rhythm, right? But think about that also. Like, why did God need to rest? Why is God resting? He's not tired. He can't be worn out. He's the creator of the universe. He can do all of these things with just a scoop of his hand. He makes the oceans. Like, this is the God. So why does God rest? The answer to that is, it's the same reason Jesus was baptized. Like, think about that. Why was Jesus baptized? Jesus didn't need forgiveness. He didn't need to wash away his sins. Jesus is the perfect human. Why was Jesus baptized? To give an example for his followers. Why does God rest? So that everything in his creation that he had completed gets an example of rest. To rest in the work that he has done. So from the beginning of time, generation after generation, the rhythm of the universe, it's not designed for us to live at a pace to work till we collapse. It's designed for us to arise from rest to find meaningful work. Do you see the difference? That's a life-changing difference, because for me, it was the end of the week is Sunday, and we finally get to crash and do all the things so we can start on Monday. Our calendars still say that Sunday is the first day of the week, but we sure don't treat it like that. It's like the catch-up day for everything else. This idea of sleep till you're dead shows a lack of confidence in what God has done. And you can hear it in the words of Jesus. They're paraphrased here in the message. Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you a way to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. I love this phrase that Eugene Peterson comes up with, this unforced rhythms of grace. It's not a striving. It is just to lay in the rhythms and the grooves that God has placed in the world. And that's something that the world tries to co-opt, right? Like we have phrases for it where we, unforced rhythms where it's like, listen to your body. It'll tell you what you need to do. Get a lot of self-care and a lot of me time. And there's data, there's scientific data that points to all of this. Like the loss in productivity that happens after you work so many hours a week, like it's scientifically proven that people that work an extra 20 hours over this certain threshold, which is about a 6-hour week, it's funny how that works, a 6-day week, 6-hour week, let's go. Like a 6-day work week, people that work 20 hours over that average don't produce more, like 20 hours more. The productivity drops off. We've got historically high cases of adrenal fatigue, depression, anxiety, suicide, all of these things. Like our bodies are shutting down, yet we just build more coffee shops and yoga studios. And I got nothing against coffee, and I can't do yoga, but those are all great self-care things. But the crash seems inevitable, and we take Sabbath, or Sabbath takes us. You see, the world is catching on, but it leans into more like self-care over soul care. But what if those two things are not mutually exclusive? What if self-care and soul care are God's rhythms into the created world? If our bodies are sending us these signals to go, hey, you're not created to live at this pace. You need to slow down. Just like the tires on your car need alignment because y'all are hitting curbs all over this town. Like they need alignment from time to time. Our bodies need alignment or we're gonna run them into the ditch. But it's not just rhythm. It's not just rhythm. Sometimes we wanna really focus on the command and we wanna focus on the rhythm. And we were just clapping together. So I know maybe it's not just rhythm. I hope it's not just rhythm. We can also see Sabbath as a defense against the hurriness of our world. So number 3, Sabbath is defiance. It's defiance. Defiance against cultural norms. Defiance against a world that is set up to not let you take a day off. Defiance against all of the excuses that you will come up with while you're listening to this sermon to go, well, there's no way we could ever do that as a family. Like because of this and this and this, this is what our schedule looks like. It's a defiance against those things. Sabbath is like a red light on a racetrack. It's like a stop sign on a freeway, which we do in Missouri sometimes. This is wild. Sabbath is like when people look at you crazy because you're not doing something, right? You're the only one that can push the brakes, though. You're the only one that nobody's going to go, hey, why don't you take a Sabbath? And why don't you slow down? You're the only one that can push the brakes and the pedals when the world is speeding up. One historian noted that when the Romans met the Jews in the first century and before, the Romans met the Jews, they noticed that their strict adherence to the law and abstaining on the Sabbath, their only reaction was contempt. They were so used to being under the boot of the emperor, so used to Caesar dictating every single thing that they did, so used to being enslaved to the world. And people who live enslaved to the world have a hard time understanding freedom. But to those who live free, it's the words of Paul when he says, I've learned to be content in everything. I've learned that I can slow down, I can speed up, I can stop and take a break, and I know that the cosmos doesn't stop rotating because I chose to take a nap. It's the psalmist singing back in the book of Psalms, I lack nothing because you have provided everything. Theologian Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote a landmark book in 1951 on the Sabbath, and in it he makes the observation that every other Jewish holiday is determined by space. the solstice, the moon, like what our planet is doing in regards to the solar system, they would go, well, at this point, the moon is here, so we're gonna celebrate this. And they'd line up their holidays and their feasts and their traditions accordingly, except for the Sabbath. The Sabbath as a holiday has nothing to do with space. And in his words, entirely independent of the month and related to the moon. It's a weekly rhythm ingrained. And here's how he says it in his book. He says, the 6 days a week we live under the tyranny of space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to the holiness in time. We have so much space and so little time. We have so much space, whether you believe that Katy Perry went there or not. There's a lot up there, okay? Like there's just these vast galaxies that are unexplored, light years away that we can only see with telescopes. And we think, man, there's more on the other side of that. There's unexplored depths of the ocean that we can't reach or haven't reached yet. There's so much, there's uninhabited islands still on this planet. And we tend to think, man, I can't control that. You know, it's one of the things that points me most to God. As I go outside and I look up at the stars, I'm like, man, God, I hope you got all of that going, because if something goes awry, like we're not controlling that. We can let go of that, but we also tend to try to do the same thing with our time, right? We strap on watches and then we let our watch drag us around. I took my watch off, not because I was Sabbathing, but because I didn't want to know how far I went over. But that's what we do, right? We think we do the same thing with time. Time is something that we just cannot control. On a Sabbath, instead of frantically checking our watches and our phones and rushing from one thing to another, we say to the clock, you will slow down today. And of course, you can't create more time. You can't make 24 hours stretch into 48 hours. But we can't really often make it 24 hours of rest. You say to the clock, you won't push me like you did the other 6 days. This is a stop sign, 24 hours of living. Stop living in the how of everything and start living in the wow and the now of God's creation. Like he did all this and sustains all of this and keeps all of this going, even if I stop. I like how one particular preacher said it. He said, Sabbath is like the governor on the speed of life. When everything else makes me want to speed up, Sabbath goes, oh, let's back up a little bit. Let's take a rest. A determination to walk at the pace of heaven and not hustle. A determination to walk at the pace of peace and not production, trust and not transactions. About 5 to 7 years ago, the Christian book market exploded with books on Sabbath and rest and rhythms. Yeah, there's scientific data, but there's also just this longing and this aching in the Christian community for something more. That's now we're just going to go along with the world and continue to fill up our schedules. And I remember it was 2019, our 10th anniversary. Bree and I sat on the beach in Mexico. It's a great place to talk about Sabbath. You know, kids running around, right? We listened to, she read the book, like all the words and stuff. I listened to it at 2 times speed because I still haven't slowed down yet. Now, we talked so much on that trip, and it really became kind of a landmark moment for us. It became like a stop sign in the stand. And it's really, really easy to talk about when we get home, right? Or you might even think about today. You're like, yeah, we're doing this, all right? When we get home, after lunch, right? After we get this done, whatever. There's just so many other things about it. But for us, I mean, worship felt like work. Delight and rhythm were like fairy tale words in the world of having kids. It's like you're just running from one thing to the next. Like we just filled up our whole schedule. So we became defiant. One of the books that we read there on that beach pointed out that the 4 Hebrew letters that make up the word for shalom actually translated peace. That's the word we use for peace, shalom. You see it as a greeting for Jewish people. Hello and goodbye is kind of how they use it. But the deeper meaning of that word, the actual translation, if you break it down, would actually sound more like this. That shalom means to destroy the authority attached to chaos. To destroy the authority attached to chaos. And I was like, that sounds like Saturday at our house, right? We need some shalom. There's a lot of chaos. There's not a lot of authority, right? There's a lot of things going on. Life just seems out of control. So to be defiant, to search for shalom. And so maybe you feel like that this morning. You're just like, there's no way I could do this. Life is chaos. I wouldn't know what to do if something didn't catch on fire or something go to do. Like I wouldn't know how to schedule my life. But Sabbath is peace in the storm because you know you're sitting in the boat with the one who can calm it all. Sabbath is that slice of heaven in your chaos because you're in the presence of the Holy One who can destroy the authority that is attached to all the chaos happening in your life. And so we started saying no to a lot of things. We started saying no to a lot of good things. Like I'm not trying to think our kids would be like super great at sports or anything like that or whatever. Like I'm not prophesying that, but we just had to start setting some boundaries. If our family's going to do this, it's going to look different. And you want to get some crazy looks from people. Tell people you're not available on Saturday because you don't have plans. They'd be like, did I hear that right? Yeah, we're not doing anything, so we can't do anything, right? Like the kids really don't get that one. Like, the kids are like, why can't we go doing it? Because we're doing nothing, right? Like, stop asking to do stuff. We're doing nothing, right? It can be a little confusing, but I think I found the cure, and it goes way back to my childhood. I think when people ask me to do stuff on a day we've planned as Sabbath, I'm just going to put my head in my hands, and I'm going to say, on the Sabbath? You would ask me? So they'll remember it. They may never talk to you again, but they'll remember it. It's like, I'm going to have everybody scared of me, like, don't ask him. And I'll go lastly. This is the one that I think gets overlooked the most for church people. So if you consider yourself a church person, maybe this is true for you, but Sabbath is a gift. Sabbath is a gift. I think it gets overlooked because we see it often as losing another day. When I first started hearing about like modern Christians practicing the Sabbath, I was like, I didn't think we were like, I thought that was for that's for Jewish people, right? Like, I really like ribs. I want to eat ribs. Is that okay? Are we doing this? Like, are we doing, so it got really confusing. It's like, but for me, the first thing, like when it came across my brain, I was like, yeah, that's like, I got 7 days and now you're taking one of them away. So now I've got 7 days worth of work to do in 6 days, which sounds a whole lot not like the command that God gave in the Old Testament, but it gets very transactional, and this is not a new problem. The Pharisees had the same problem. If you remember back in Mark chapter 2 and 3, Jesus does a couple miracles on the Sabbath and gets people really, really stirred up. He lets his disciples eat off of the grain fields on the Sabbath. As they're walking by, they just kind of grab some grain and eat it. Right? And they're like, wow, this is causing a stir. You see, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they're so concerned with the regulations and the stipulations of the law that they had forgotten the whole point of the Sabbath to begin with. I love this when Jesus says to him in Mark chapter 3, verse 3, he's about to heal a man with a withered hand. And he looks at the Pharisees kind of out of the corner of his eyes and he goes, hey, is it lawful for me to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil? To save a life or to kill? And there may be a lot of questions that you have about Sabbath and practicing and all that sort of stuff, but these are pretty simple questions, right? Like, should I save someone's life or take someone's life on the Sabbath? Should I do good or evil on the Sabbath? These are slam dunk questions. But he's got them a little bit trapped because if he can heal this man, the only reason the Pharisees would prohibit it is because the sun hasn't gone down yet. And that doesn't sound like a very gracious, loving, healing God, does it? If Jesus can do it, why does it matter what day it is? And so if we enter Sabbath practice with a list of rules, and it's all about subtraction of pleasure and delight. If you approach the Sabbath thinking that God has this big divine ruler, and if you walk too far, you're going to get slapped on the wrist, or you do too much work, you're going to get slapped, or if you order something online, or if you weren't meditating all day and praying and reading your Bible with your children all in a nice little circle, like if you weren't doing that God is mad at you, then the practice will never seem like a gift. Jesus said it this way, the best way, as he usually does. He says, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Think about that. Think about what that means. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Lord created Sabbath as a gift for his people, not a burden for his people, not a like, I'm going to give you this gift, but now here's what I expect out of it. Have you ever gotten a gift that was more like a suggestion? Like, I don't know, like body wash, or like a razor, washing machine. What'd you say? Pots and pans? Yeah, yeah, just restaurant gift cards, like something like that, like those sort of things where it's like this is more like, yeah, happy birthday. Here's a suggestion. We tend to think of God like that, like, oh, the Sabbath is a gift. Okay, like a whole day that I get to do nothing fun. A whole day of just burden. A whole day of what I can't do. But the Sabbath is not made for man. No, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so we don't serve the Sabbath. Felt like the Pharisees, that's what they were trying to do, like get all the answers right, get all the pieces right, don't walk this far, don't do this much, don't heal, don't eat, all that sort of stuff. It was all about do's and don'ts. But we don't serve the Sabbath. We serve Jesus. We serve the Lord who created the Sabbath as a gift for us. And so we found some things really helpful. We did the Sabbath practice way before it was like all in the nice, neat, pretty videos that a lot of our groups are going through right now with the 4-week Sabbath practice. And we kind of latched on to these what I like to call just 4 walls of Sabbath. And so for us, if it's inside these 4 walls, or we can justify it inside these 4 walls, thumbs up. No need to feel fear or shame about it. Here's our 4 walls of Sabbath. It's stop, rest, delight, worship. Stop, rest, delight, worship. The word Sabbath literally means stop. That's all it means. Like it's not some high holy word, Shabbat, this, whatever. It just means stop. So for us, this usually will include some kind of getting off of our devices. Sometimes it includes letting our kids get on devices so we can just stare at the wall and be quiet for a second. But again, we just say no to a lot of things, you know? Like there's a lot of things. We would stop the laundry, stop working, just stop. Just stop. Like a stop sign. Next is rest. Rest looks different for every person in our family. Probably looks different for every person in this room. I take really long naps. Like sometimes they're indistinguishable from the sleeping night. Like it's a long nap. I don't even think about it. I just fall asleep when I wake up. My wife takes 17 and a half minute naps. We're different, okay? We're built different. That's just, so the kids need a little help to rest sometimes because sometimes they don't take naps or anything like that. So it can look different. Walks can be restful. Taking a bath, breathing deep. When was the last time you just sat and like breathed deep when you weren't hyperventilating, right? Like we didn't have all the worries of life. You sit on the back porch, you grill some food, like rest, as God did on the 7th day. Number 3 is delight. I really struggled with this on my sabbatical because I felt like it was a gift from the church and I felt like I needed to be productive, which also felt very counterintuitive to what a sabbatical was supposed to be. I had a really good buddy and mentor talk to me. There was just stuff I was like, I want to go on a float trip. I want to camp. I want to, maybe go see a football game, because I don't get a whole lot of Sunday afternoons to do that. And he was like, he helped remind me of this. And maybe somebody just needs this morning, is that God likes to watch his kids have fun. Now, there might be a moment where he goes, you're having too much fun, right? Like I know where some of your brains went on that and you were just like, yeah, he does. Like, no, there's still commandments. But God likes to watch his kids have fun. What do you like to watch your kids do? To watch kids play in the yard, sing, dance. God likes to watch his kids delight in his creation. So it's floating on the river, making love with your spouse, cooking together, sharing a meal, friends. What do you love? What are the people you love to be around? Not the people you invite over and you feel like you gotta chit chat and entertain with the small talk and that sort of stuff. How can you be around a community that makes you realize that God has given you gifts of delight and pleasure? What community lets you be you? And then number 4, of most importance, worship. Worship. Put yourself in Adam and Eve's shoes. They probably didn't have shoes, but if you think about it, being in the presence of the God who created you and created everything for our enjoyment, who created a perfect garden in Eden, who has created a perfect eternity that we are headed towards. Worship the God who sustains you and provides for you. And when you step away thinking that you're holding the world on the weight of your shoulders, knowing that he's got the whole world in his hands. So I'll close with just one final illustration that just helps me kind of see Sabbath. And then we're gonna pray together. It takes 365.24 days for the earth to orbit around the sun. You can check my math on that because I looked it up on Wikipedia too. So one full time around the sun, 365.24 days. Obviously, our calendar, 365 days. So every fourth year, we have a leap year. We add a day to our calendar that balances out the whole situation. I'm not an astrophysicist, and I don't even know if that's what astrophysicists do, but I think it is. So I'm not going to pretend to know how this works, but I know that every 4 years we get an extra day, and if you were born on that day, then you can pretend like you're super young, like all that sort of stuff. But like we set the calendar straight so that everything is back in its planned order. This is how I view our Sabbath days. For 30 years of my life, I walked with Jesus, but every so often I would feel like if it's a train, I'm just a little bit off the track. Things are just a little bit off. Now, I never derailed my faith. I never went off the rails and had to be brought back, all that sort of stuff. That never prodigal son situation for me, but like I always just feel like a little bit of rub, right? Just a little bit off track. And so when I was younger, I would find something to kind of like defibrillate my heart back into rhythm. For growing up young, it was church camp. Just to be brutally honest, it was like, if I can get to church camp, without denying God and his existence, I'm going to make it. Because I'd get fired up at church camp and we'd play that game where tetherball where you just smack it around. Like, I don't know what it's about that. Just get the anger out, right? But I'm sure we worship there too. But like that was kind of my regular rhythm every year. I'd just like up a mountain, down a valley, up a mountain, down a valley. All week long, we are leaning towards the world. We're drawn to it, the rhythms that the world wants to set for you. But as I've grown up in my faith, I realize they don't make church camp for 40-year-olds, and I need it way more often than once a year. So all week long being drawn to the world, man, we lean towards our own desires. We let the enemy win. We stress over the things we can't control. We take bad advice. We bury ourselves in the hurry of our culture. 6 days we lean towards the world. And it's not like we're out there worshiping Satan or anything, right? Like I'm probably still 8 out of 10 on the Big 10, right? Still doing all right. But there's just something about living in a fallen world that pulls me slightly off each day. And after 6 of them, I'm thinking, man, if this continues, the Sabbath for me is my course correction. It's this blessed day, not tuned out, but fully tuned in to what God is doing in the rhythms of my life. A weekly reminder that I'm not the one in control. A commanded rhythm aligning me with abundant life, aligning me with deeper delight, aligning me with worship, and a calling to a greater reward. And so this morning's going to feel a little bit like we crashed the plane at the end because we're not going to sing a song, but we're going to pray together. Corey's going to lead us in a little benediction to dismiss us out here, something to sit with. But I did want you to know, as you all stand with us, after this closing prayer, the prayer team will be down the side aisles and in the back of the room ready to pray with you if you want to step out. I'll be over in the decision point under this sign over to my left. If you want to come out and talk, if you want to know more about how we're failing at this most of the time but still trying and practicing, after this prayer would be the appropriate time to do that. So, Corey.